the division that this stuff causes, that the Democrat Party causes, I just worry about this country. I don't know how we're ever going to be united because the Democrat Party cannot have a united country. It cannot have a country at peace. It has got to stir the pot, or it can't get its base out, or it can't get its votes. That's the bottom line. So Newsom set up this Reparations Commission, and they came up with a proposal of $800 billion. People would receive up to $1.2 million. People were complaining, no, you actually owe me $200 million. And other people had sat down, apparently with a very dull pencil, and they figured out, actually, you owe me property. So white people should give me their land, because after all, we're the ones that did this. And the hate, the vile, the division that this stuff causes, that the Democrat Party causes, I just worry about this country. I don't know how we're ever going to be united because the Democrat Party cannot have a united country. It cannot have a country at peace. It has got to stir the pot, or it can't get its base out, or it can't get its votes. That's the bottom line. Let's take a look at this. ABC 10 Sacramento, California Reparations panel okays a state apology and payments. Again, state of California was not a slave state. Go.
The California Reparations Task Force is recommending that the state issue a formal apology and payments to eligible black residents for the state's legacy of discrimination. This weekend, the task force met in Oakland, nearing the end of its work. They're finally answering the question of what reparations could look like.
Welcome to the California Reparations Task Force 15th public hearing.
Meeting in Oakland, the California Reparations Task Force voting on its final proposals due in July. Their mission: first, study slavery and its lingering negative effects on African Americans, and second, to develop proposals for remedies through policy changes and potentially cash payments.
And the question becomes, if you did all that labor for all these years, your ancestors, how would you feel?
Dr. Amos Brown is vice chairman of the 9-person task force.
There are going to be people who say California was admitted into the Union as a free state, so why should California taxpayers be on the hook for reparations?
Because they benefited from California being complicit with the slave states.
The task force focused on these.
Okay, so he doesn't have an answer. It's ridiculous. Go ahead.
Effects of slavery in its 500-page interim report released last summer. The report details 12 areas to be addressed, from the unjust legal system to housing discrimination, separate.
Keep in mind they have all these phony experts pulling all these reports together. These people didn't write the report. I mean, I was on a school board once. We always had people handing us papers and figuring stuff out, and so they just gave them a directive, and so they produce all these reports. Go ahead.
School education to racism in the environment and infrastructure. Of the dozens of harms,
I look at this and I say to myself, two things. Migration. You see these people lining up on the border, coming into our country by the multi-millions, coming into this country? Are they coming into this country because of racial terror? Are they coming into this country because of political disenfranchisement? Are they coming into this country because of pathologizing? I love the way they make up words. Black families? Because of the wealth gap? Why would they come into a country with a history like ours and present-day systemic racism in a white-dominant society? Why would they leave a culture that is not white-dominated to come into a country that is? Now think this through. Now, more on migration. If this country is as the Marxist left says it is, and the Democrat Party, why wouldn't you leave it? That is, you don't need a visa to leave America. You don't need a passport to leave America. You don't need a damn thing to leave America. Why would you stay? Well, it's my country. But if the country is as you say it is, my country or not, why not go to another country that you think is more parasitical? That's a real word, by the way. I mean, why wouldn't you? Because this is just such a complete outrageous fraud. Go ahead.
The task force highlights policy changes to address 7 areas and a combination of policy and cash payments to address the other 5. The task force found that a black Californian at least 71 years old that can trace their lineage back to an enslaved person could receive up to $1.2 million in cash payments if the recommendations are voted into law by the legislature.
How likely is it that the recommendations that you put forward to the state legislature will actually come true?
It was our moral obligation and practical obligation to state the harms, to present the facts of the crime that was done. And in terms of what should be paid, the state assembly and the Senate have a heart, have a conscience. They would hopefully do the right thing.
Let me ask this question that has never asked about paying reparations. Who's going to pay the hundreds of thousands who died during the Civil War to end slavery, who never owned a slave, who never supported slavery? The soldiers in the North. Who's going to pay their families reparations? They paid the ultimate price. They died. It was the most horrific war in American history. More Americans died than any other war, more casualties than any other war. And in the South, not just most, but the vast majority of men who were fighting that war in the trenches, the infantry, didn't own slaves. They were too poor themselves. Now, there's no excuse for slavery. It is a bad mark on our history, as it is with any country where that practice occurred. No excuses. But I'll be damned if I'm going to then buy into this Marxist left agenda, rip our country to pieces, where we had a civil war. There's no other country that had a civil war, none, for the purpose of ending slavery. And there's no way that I'm going to buy into this Marxist attack on the greatest country on the face of the earth.
For all this and much more, sign up for Levin TV.